A fortress wall defies 500 years of logic. Stones larger than elephants are locked together without mortar, their seams tighter than a sheet of paper. This is Sacsayhuamán, an ancient Inca citadel whose construction remains an engineering mystery that humbles modern science. By the end of this, you will see history not as a linear progression, but as a landscape dotted with peaks of forgotten genius. How did people move 100-ton blocks across mountain ranges without wheels? What knowledge allowed them to shape granite with such impossible precision that it outlasts earthquakes? We will trace the journey of these megaliths from distant quarries to their perfect, interlocking home, and sift through the theories from meticulous labor to lost technologies. The true story hidden in these stones challenges everything we assume about the past. What does it mean when ancient walls are smarter than our own? Rising above the modern city of Cusco, the stone terraces of Sacsayhuamán command the sky. To stand here is to feel the altitude in your lungs and the ambition in the stones. This was never merely a fortress. It was the crown of an empire, built at a breathtaking 12,000 feet where the air is thin and the horizons stretch forever. The Inca saw their capital as a sacred Puma, a symbol of power and the earth itself. Cusco formed the body, and Sacsayhuamán, with its 3 distinctive tiers of zigzagging walls, was the fiercely bared teeth. This was a statement carved in granite. Every aspect of the site was imbued with meaning, serving as a military stronghold, a ceremonial stage for rituals that connected the people to the sun and stars, and an administrative nerve center. Almost impossible to grasp today. What visitors see now are the foundational bones, the indestructible lower walls that survived centuries of deliberate dismantling. After their arrival, Spanish colonists systematically took apart the upper structures, hauling the cut stones away to build their own churches and mansions in the valley below. They saw raw material, they missed the masterpiece. Before that, Sacsayhuamán was a sprawling complex of towers, temples, and reservoirs, a city within a city that could house thousands. To comprehend the engineering puzzle we face, we must first understand this lost grandeur. The challenge was not simply to stack a few big rocks. It was to build a sacred, unshakable mountain at the roof of the world, a project that defined a civilization's relationship with the gods, the land, and time itself. That monumental vision is the true foundation for everything that follows. The first mystery is not in the walls themselves, but in their origin. To find the source of these megaliths, you must look beyond the hilltop, down into the valleys and across the shoulders of distant mountains. The stone is a specific type of andesite, a dense volcanic rock formed under immense pressure. The nearest quarries that match this material, like the vast site of Rumacolca, lie over 12 miles away from Sacsayhuamán. On a map, that distance seems manageable, but this is the Andes. The path is not a flat road. It is a vertical obstacle course of sheer cliffs, deep ravines, and roaring rivers. Now picture a single block of stone from that quarry, not a small one, but one of the giants. It weighs more than 120 tons, the equivalent of 2 fully loaded semi-trucks. The Inca had no wheels, no iron, and no beasts of burden strong enough to even nudge such a mass. The llama, their primary pack animal, can carry about 100 pounds. This task was off by a factor of over 2,000, so the question shifts from how they moved them to how they even began to conceive it was possible. The extraction at the quarry is its own marvel. Researchers note evidence of careful work, where stone was prized from the bedrock along natural fracture lines, likely using simple stone hammers and wooden wedges that were soaked to expand and crack the rock. Once free, the monolith had to begin its journey. The prevailing theory involves a system of leverage, earthen ramps, and a fleet of log rollers. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers would have coordinated to inch the stone forward, constantly moving logs from the back to the front in a painstaking, rhythmic dance. It is a testament to staggering communal effort and organization. Yet, some aspects of this journey feel incomplete. How did they navigate the steepest slopes without the stone gaining catastrophic momentum? How did the log rollers not simply pulverize under such concentrated weight on rough ground? This logistical nightmare leads to a deeper, more philosophical inquiry. Their solution, whatever it truly was, speaks to a relationship with the landscape that was fundamentally different from our own. They did not see the mountain as an obstacle to be conquered, but as a living entity to be negotiated with, perhaps even persuaded. There are oral histories and lesser-known chronicles that mention a plant, now lost to time, whose sap could soften stone, allowing it to be shaped and molded before it hardened again. While mainstream archaeology finds no evidence for this, the persistence of the idea is telling. It suggests the Inca were not just masterful engineers, but potentially brilliant natural chemists, seeking answers not in force alone, but in the hidden properties of their own environment. The journey of each block, then, was more than a transport. It was a ritual, a slow, deliberate act of bringing a piece of the sacred earth to its destined place in the celestial design of the Puma's teeth. The true weight they carried was not just in tons, but in intention. The stones did not arrive at the hilltop ready for assembly. They came as colossal, rough-hewn masses, and this is where the second, even more perplexing mystery begins. The transformation is almost alchemical. Each multi-ton block was not simply squared off. It was sculpted into a unique, irregular polygon, with faces that are subtly curved and edges that meet their neighbors in complex, three-dimensional seams. This is not like stacking bricks. It is akin to crafting a perfect, gravity-defying jigsaw puzzle where every piece weighs as much as a house. The precision is what truly stuns the modern eye. The joints between these gigantic stones are so tight that, famously, not even a single sheet of paper can be slipped between them. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a measurable, physical fact that has endured for half a millennium in one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. So how was it done? The accepted archaeological toolkit for the Inca is humble, even rudimentary. They had stone hammers, often made from a harder rock like hematite. They had bronze chisels, though bronze is too soft to efficiently cut andesite granite. And they had abrasive sands like quartz, which could be used with water to slowly grind a surface smooth through relentless friction. The theory is one of monumental patience. Teams of workers would have painstakingly pounded the stone with hammers, gradually shaping it over what must have been thousands upon thousands of work hours. They would then use the abrasive sand to polish the contact surfaces to a mirror-like finish, test fitting the block repeatedly until the fit was perfect. The evidence for this is visible in unfinished stones at quarries, which show the distinctive pockmarks of relentless hammering. Yet, when you stand before the largest, most perfectly fitted stones of Sacsayhuamán, this explanation can feel incomplete. The scale of the patience required becomes almost mythical. Shaping a single 100-ton block with a stone hammer is not just difficult, it is an endeavor that seems to defy practical timelines, even for an entire society dedicated to the task. The curved surfaces, in particular, present a profound challenge, creating a precise, smooth convex curve on one stone to match a precise concave curve on another, across several feet of surface with hand tools alone, borders on the superhuman. This gap between the tools we know they had and the results we see has led to a quiet but persistent debate among experts. Are we missing a piece of the technological puzzle? Some researchers point to the possibility of more sophisticated surveying and guidance systems, using filled water channels or precise chord measurements to map the complex shapes. Others wonder about the use of heat, perhaps from focused sunlight or fire, to weaken the stone surface before working it. And then there are those who look back to the old stories, the ones about plant extracts that could temporarily soften rock, allowing it to be molded like clay. While no direct evidence for such a substance has been found, the very existence of these legends points to a shared human intuition. When faced with an achievement that seems to transcend the obvious methods, we instinctively feel there must be a lost key, a piece of knowledge that slipped through the cracks of history. The shaping of the stones, therefore, is more than a question of technique. It is a window into a different kind of knowledge, one that blended extreme physical skill with a potentially deep, empirical understanding of materials that we have yet to fully rediscover. The walls whisper not just of labor but of a forgotten science. This seamless fit is the true signature of the builders, a technique so advanced it has its own name, Ashlar masonry. The concept is simple to state but staggering to behold. No mortar, no cement, no glue of any kind holds these stones together. The entire structural integrity of the wall, capable of withstanding centuries, relies solely on the perfect, intimate conformity of one uniquely shaped block to its neighbor. It is architecture as a three-dimensional embrace. This was not an aesthetic choice, it was a brilliant engineering solution born from necessity. The Andes are not a stable place. The ground here shudders and shifts with regular, powerful earthquakes. A rigid wall, built with straight lines and right angles held together by brittle mortar, would crack and crumble under such stress. But the walls of Sacsayhuamán do something remarkable. They dance. When an earthquake's energy ripples through the ground, these polygonal stones, with their slightly rounded faces and intricate joints, are designed to move. They sway, they shift, they settle. They absorb and dissipate the energy through a series of tiny, distributed movements across thousands of interlocking surfaces. Once the tremor passes, the stones simply settle back into their perfect, locked position. It is a living wall, engineered with a flexibility that modern, reinforced concrete strives to achieve. Look closely at the joints. You will almost never find a perfect 90-degree corner. Instead, the stones meet in a network of beveled edges, rounded intersections, and interlocking pockets. This deliberate avoidance of right angles prevents stress from concentrating at a single point. Think of it like a handshake. A stiff, straight hand is brittle, but a hand that curves and molds to the other is strong and adaptable. The stones handshake each other. The precision required for this is almost incomprehensible. To achieve such a fit with multi-ton granite blocks implies a level of surveying and craftsmanship we would associate today with precision machining. Imagine trying to carve two separate, irregular pieces of solid granite, each the size of a car, so that when brought together they match across every square inch with a gap of less than a millimeter. Now imagine doing it without laser guides, without computer modeling, without even hardened steel tools. It suggests a geometric and tactile understanding of stone that feels almost supernatural. The stonemasons did not just see the rock, they understood it on a vibrational level, sensing how it would behave under pressure and over eons. They worked with the stone's natural crystalline structure, not against it. This raises a reflective question that humbles our modern perspective. We often assume technological progress is a straight line upward, that our methods are inherently more advanced. But what if the Inca possessed a different kind of knowledge, one rooted in deep empirical observation, and a tactile genius we have since marginalized in favor of digital abstraction? Their mastery was not in forcing the material to conform to a simple blueprint, but in listening to the material itself and unlocking its hidden potential for eternal resilience. In that listening, they built a dialogue with the earth that still stands, whispering its secrets in the silent language of perfect seams. But the most audacious act was still to come. You have moved a 100-ton stone across a mountain, and you have sculpted it into a perfect, irregular shape. Now you must lift it 20 feet into the air and lower it into a waiting slot with the gentle precision of a watchmaker, all while working at an altitude where the thin air steals your breath. This final act of placement is where the theories truly strain against the limits of the possible. The conventional explanation involves an army of laborers and an immense earthen ramp. They would have built a sloping embankment of compacted soil and rubble against the rising wall, dragging the stone up this temporary incline to its destined height. Once positioned, the ramp would be dismantled. It is a logical idea, one used by cultures worldwide, yet at Sacsayhuamán the scale complicates everything. To lift the largest base stones, some weighing over 120 tons, the ramp would have needed an incredibly gentle slope to be climbable. Engineers who have modeled this suggest such a ramp, to reach just the top of the first terrace, would have been wider than a football field and required more moved earth than the entire visible fortress. The logistics become a project dwarfing the wall itself, and the archaeological record shows no clear evidence of such a massive earthwork ever being constructed or removed from around the site. This leads to alternative ideas like the use of massive levering systems. Imagine dozens of giant timber poles used as pry bars, with hundreds of people pulling on ropes to rock the stone back and forth, inching it upward onto a growing stack of stone or timber cribbing. It is a technique of incremental, agonizing lift, a battle of millimeters won through raw, coordinated force. Some researchers also propose the use of counterweights, where large baskets filled with stones on one side of a pivot would help balance and lift the megalith on the other. Modern engineers and even dedicated teams of enthusiasts have tried to replicate these methods using only the materials the Inca had available. The results are humbling. They can move multi-ton stones and even lift them modest heights, but the process is fraught with danger, incredibly slow, and achieving the final hairline accuracy seen at Sacsayhuamán remains elusive. The experiments reveal a gap, a missing step in our understanding. The placement, especially of the keystone-like blocks that lock entire sections together, suggests a level of controlled, fine adjustment that brute force and ramps struggle to explain. How do you nudge a 100-ton block a fraction of an inch to the left once it is suspended in place? This points to a sophisticated, possibly intuitive grasp of physics that we are only beginning to appreciate. It may have involved a clever use of water, sand, or gravel as a hydraulic or granular cushion, allowing the stone to be floated or settled with astonishing control. The coordination required speaks of more than just a large workforce. It implies a masterful choreography of sound, sight, and touch. Teams may have used rhythmic chanting or drum beats to synchronize their pulls, turning a chaotic heave into a precise mechanical action. The foreman, the master builder, would have needed an almost tactile sense of the stone's balance, feeling through the timbers when it was perfectly poised. This was engineering as a performance, a ritual of unity between human intention and earthly mass. What we label as an enigma of placement might actually be the highest expression of their knowledge, a seamless fusion of collective labor, empirical science, and a profound patience that viewed time as a partner, not an obstacle. They didn't just build a wall, they performed a slow, deliberate act of harmony with the very weight of the world. The sheer scale of the project forces a single, human question: who built this? The answer lies not in the name of a lone architect, but in the heartbeat of an empire, a system of shared duty called the Mita. This was the engine behind the stones, a rotational labor tax that transformed imperial citizenship into physical action. Every household across the vast realm of Tahuantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, owed a period of service to the state each year. This was not slavery, but a mandatory contribution of labor, a duty that built roads, terraced mountainsides, and yes, lifted the megaliths of Sacsayhuamán. It was a societal contract written in sweat and stone. Through the Mita, the Inca state could summon a workforce of thousands almost on demand, drawing from a vast pool of subjects across different regions. This system provided the raw human power, but its true genius was in its organization. Workers were not just an anonymous mass, they were organized by skill and task. Some communities living near the Andesite quarries would have specialized in extraction, their knowledge of the local stone passed down through generations. Others, from regions known for their rope making or their knowledge of terrain, would be tasked with the transport, and at the site itself, the master masons, the true artists of stone, would direct the final shaping and placement. Imagine the coordination, a continuous, flowing pipeline of labor and material, with different specialized teams rotating in and out according to a grand imperial schedule. It was a form of project management that rivaled the complexity of the architecture itself, all orchestrated without written records, relying instead on the knotted strings of the quipu for accounting and the relentless efficiency of a highly organized state. This raises a deeper point about motivation. Why would so many people contribute so much effort to a project that served the state and the divine king, the Sapa Inca? The answer lies in a worldview where individual and collective purpose were deeply intertwined. Service through the Mita was a sacred duty, a way to honor the ancestors, the earth goddess Pachamama, and the sun god Inti. It reinforced social bonds and distributed the benefits of empire as workers were fed, housed, and often celebrated during their service. Building Sacsayhuamán was not just construction, it was an act of collective worship and identity, reinforcing the cosmic order that held their world together. This stands in stark contrast to modern project management, which often prioritizes efficiency, profit, and individual roles. The Inca project was driven by a unifying belief system, where the act of building was as important as the finished structure. The monument was not just built by the people, it was built for the people, a physical manifestation of their shared faith and the power of their social contract. When we look at those impossible walls, we are not just seeing clever engineering. We are witnessing the fossilized imprint of a society that could align thousands of hearts and minds toward a single, staggering purpose. The stone holds the memory of that unity. That resilience was put to the ultimate test not once but repeatedly. The ground beneath Sacsayhuamán has shaken with violent force many times over the centuries. In these moments of crisis, the ancient walls performed a miracle of stability, while the colonial buildings constructed directly on top of them, using their quarried stones and European mortar, have cracked and tumbled. This stark contrast is not a coincidence. It is proof of a masterclass in seismic engineering, conceived 500 years before the science even had a name. Modern structural engineers who study the site speak of it with a tone of profound respect. They identify several brilliant, interlocking principles at work. First, look at the shapes. Throughout the complex, doors, windows, and niches are not rectangular. They are trapezoidal, wider at the bottom and narrowing toward the top. This shape inherently distributes weight and stress more evenly, preventing cracks from forming at the vulnerable corners during an earthquake. Next, observe the walls themselves. They do not stand perfectly vertical. They lean slightly inward, a subtle batter that lowers the structure's center of gravity, making it far more difficult to topple. But the true genius is in the polygonal masonry itself, acting as what engineers call a passive damping system. Think of a modern skyscraper, which often has a massive tuned mass damper, a giant pendulum in its top floors, designed to sway opposite the building's movement and cancel out shaking. The wall of Sacsayhuamán is essentially a distributed damper. Each uniquely shaped stone is its own independent unit, locked to its neighbors but not rigidly fused. When seismic energy courses through the ground, the entire wall is designed to flex. The stones can minutely shift, rock, and settle against one another, absorbing and dissipating the destructive force across thousands of interlocking surfaces. The energy is converted into tiny movements and the harmless sound of stone grating against stone, rather than into catastrophic fractures. Once the tremor passes, gravity simply settles the blocks back into their perfect, interlocked position. One engineer described it as a wall that dances and then remembers its place. This is not speculative mystery, it is observable, demonstrable physics. Today, researchers in earthquake-prone regions study the principles embedded in Sacsayhuamán for inspiration. The goal is to design modern buildings that can emulate this ancient, resilient flexibility, moving with the earth rather than fighting against it. In that pursuit, the past is not a relic, it is a living textbook. The builders understood something fundamental that we are still striving to fully codify, that true strength lies not in rigid resistance, but in intelligent, graceful adaptation. Their legacy is a silent lesson carved in granite on how to build for eternity. Yet the greatest precision may not have been for the walls but for the sky. To understand Sacsayhuamán's true purpose, you must see it not just as a fortress, but as a vast stone observatory and a three-dimensional map of the Inca cosmos. Every angle, every terrace, every distinctive zigzag was a deliberate syllable in a sacred language written for the gods. The three great tiers that form the Puma's teeth, for example, are widely interpreted as a representation of the three realms of the Inca world: the Honan Pacha, or upper world of the stars and gods, the K Pacha, the middle world of the living, and the Uku Pacha, the inner world of ancestors and origins. You literally walked through this cosmology as you ascended, but the alignments go deeper. Researchers in archaeoastronomy have mapped how specific walls and corridors frame the rising and setting of the sun during the solstices, those critical moments that dictated the agricultural and ceremonial calendar. Windows and niches were positioned to catch the first golden light of the June solstice sunrise, transforming stone into a precise solar instrument. This was a calendar in granite, ensuring the empire remained in harmony with the celestial order. The zigzagging form of the walls themselves is perhaps the most striking symbolic feature. While brilliant for defense, their shape is a direct representation of lightning, sacred to Illapa, the god of thunder, rain, and weather. In a culture dependent on agriculture, controlling or appealing to the forces of rain was a matter of survival. By etching the form of lightning into the very bones of their most important citadel, the Inca were performing a permanent act of sympathetic magic, seeking to harness and honor the power that watered their crops. This cosmological blueprint changes the entire question of why the masonry is so impossibly perfect. If the structure was a conduit between the earthly and the divine, then ordinary construction simply would not suffice. A wall built to greet the sun god Inti at a specific moment on the longest day of the year could not be off by a single degree. A zigzag representing the path of sacred lightning had to be flawless in its execution. The spiritual imperative for precision would have been overwhelming. This suggests the master masons were not just builders, they were priests of geometry, their work a form of active prayer. The painstaking process of shaping each unique stone, the obsessive pursuit of the seamless joint, was not merely an engineering goal. It was a ritual act of creating a perfect microcosm. A gap in the masonry would be a crack in the universe, a flaw in the connection to the gods. When you view their effort through this lens, the decades of labor, the monumental patience, the acceptance of a timeline that stretched across generations, all coalesce into a different kind of logic. They were not building for a king's lifetime, they were building for the eternal cycle of the sun and the stars. The stones had to be perfect because they were meant to converse with the heavens themselves. This celestial purpose may be the most compelling clue of all, the silent driver behind a perfection that still leaves us breathless. The year 1533 brought a force that even these resilient walls could not repel. Spanish conquistadors led by Francisco Pizarro marched into the heart of the Inca Empire. When they looked upon Sacsayhuamán, they did not see a sacred text written in stone, a cosmic clock, or a masterpiece of seismic engineering. They saw a military stronghold, a symbol of a power they intended to replace, and most pragmatically, an incredibly convenient quarry. The cultural gulf between the builders and the dismantlers could not have been wider. For the Inca, the stones were alive with meaning, each one a participant in a living dialogue with the divine. For the Spanish, they were inert material, valuable only for their size and their pre-cut shape. This fundamental misunderstanding set in motion a process of systematic erasure. Following a series of conflicts, including a major battle at the site itself, the Spanish took control. They immediately began the methodical dismantling of Sacsayhuamán's upper structures. The great towers that once pierced the sky, the intricate temples, the complex reservoirs and residential areas, all were carefully taken apart. The stones, already perfectly shaped and finished, were prized possessions. Teams of laborers, often the descendants of the very people who built the walls, were now forced to tear them down. These stones were rolled down the hill on log ramps, a cruel reversal of their original ascent, and hauled into the growing colonial city below. They became the foundations of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, the walls of mansions for Spanish nobility, and the cobblestones of new plazas. In their new context, they were just building material, their sacred geometry hidden beneath plaster and ornamentation. This act of recycling, while practical for the colonists, created a profound historical irony. The very process that destroyed the upper complex also preserved its indestructible base. As the Spaniards cleared the hilltop for their own purposes, they buried the lower tiers in rubble and earth, effectively sealing them in a protective cocoon of debris. For centuries, the most brilliant aspects of the Inca engineering lay hidden, shielded from further destruction and the elements, waiting to be rediscovered. Historical accounts from Spanish chroniclers, while often biased, give us glimpses of the scale of what was lost. They wrote of towers so high they seemed to touch the clouds, of buildings sheathed in gold, and of a complexity that bewildered them. But they rarely recorded the purpose, the alignments, or the construction methods. The living knowledge held by the master masons and the priests of the site was scattered, suppressed, or lost in the devastating upheaval of conquest. This adds a poignant layer of tragedy to the mystery that remains. We are left to piece together the full grandeur of Sacsayhuamán from its foundational stump and fragmented descriptions. One cannot help but wonder, with a deep sense of loss, how much more we would understand about ancient engineering, astronomy, and a unique world view if those towers still stood, if we could walk the complete ceremonial pathways, if the full design had survived to speak its story. The silence of those missing stones is perhaps the loudest part of the mystery. To truly grasp the uniqueness of Sacsayhuamán, we must place it on a global stage alongside the other legendary feats of the ancient world. The pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, and the Great Walls of Peru share a common language of scale, but they speak with different dialects of engineering. Each site presents a distinct answer to the same fundamental question: how do humans move and manipulate the unmovable? The comparison is not about which is older or more important, but about the specific, almost obsessive puzzle of fitting giant, irregular stones together without any binding agent. This is where the Inca approach stands apart as a singular achievement. Consider the Great Pyramid. Its limestone and granite blocks are famously massive, but they are primarily rectangular or square. The builder's genius lay in quarrying, transport, and elevation on a staggering scale, creating a smooth, sloping plane. The precision is in the alignment to cardinal directions and the flatness of the casing stones, a triumph of surveying and linear organization. Stonehenge, with its iconic Sarsen trilithons, showcases a different skill: the post and lintel system. The challenge was raising the uprights and then hoisting the massive crosspieces, or lintels, to perch atop them, often using sophisticated joinery like mortars and tenon joints carved into the stone itself. The goal was a standing circle, a frame for celestial observation. Now, look back to the Andes. The stone itself is a first major difference. The andesite granite of Sacsayhuamán is far harder and more difficult to work than the relatively softer limestone of Giza or even the sarsen stones of England. This makes the precision of the Inca's cuts even more difficult to explain, but the defining contrast is in the philosophy of assembly. The Egyptians and the builders of Stonehenge sought to create geometric forms, straight lines and circles. The Inca masons rejected simplicity for complexity. They intentionally crafted a chaotic-looking jigsaw of polygonal shapes, each one unique. This was not a lack of skill, it was the whole point. Their engineering goal was not a smooth facade, but a dynamic, interlocking matrix. Where others sought perfect right angles, the Inca builders deliberately avoided them, understanding that irregularity created resilience. The proposed methods reflect this cultural divergence. The ramp theories for the pyramids are about linear ascent, a direct path upward. The theories for Stonehenge often involve levering, rocking, and sledges across the plains. At Sacsayhuamán, the methods seem more intimate, more tactile, a constant dialogue between the stone and the mason, involving endless test fitting, grinding, and subtle adjustment. This points to the most profound difference of all, the cultural driver. While the pyramids served as a pharaoh's gateway to the afterlife and Stonehenge likely as a ceremonial calendar, Sacsayhuamán was a living, breathing entity. It was a fortress, a temple, an observatory, and a cosmic model all at once. Its construction was an act of weaving the sacred landscape into a single, unshakable form. The perfection of the joints was a spiritual necessity, ensuring the structure could properly mediate between the earthly and the divine realms. So, when we line these wonders up, we see a spectrum of ancient genius. The pyramids awe us with their sheer, monumental ambition. Stonehenge captivates with its mysterious, celestial purpose, but Sacsayhuamán bewilders with its intimate, tactile mastery of material and its embrace of beautiful, purposeful chaos. It represents a pinnacle not of size alone, but of a specific, almost forgotten school of engineering, one that understood that to defy time and earthquakes, you must build a wall that can dance. This global context doesn't diminish the others. It simply highlights that in the specialized art of polygonal, mortarless masonry, the builders of the Andes reached a height that remains uniquely and profoundly perplexing. This pursuit of a missing piece leads us to the most tantalizing and debated theory of all, the idea of a lost ancient technology. It is a hypothesis that lives in the space between rigorous archaeology and captivating legend, suggesting the builders of Sacsayhuamán possessed knowledge so advanced, so different from our own, that it has since vanished from history. Proponents of this view look at the seamless joins and the curved surfaces, and argue that the accepted tools of stone hammers and sand simply cannot account for what we see. They point to peculiar details, like certain stones that appear to have a slightly glazed or vitrified surface, as if the rock had been subjected to intense, focused heat that melted its outer layer to a glass-like finish. Could some form of advanced heat application, perhaps using lenses to concentrate sunlight or a chemical process, have been used to soften the stone for shaping? This question is often intertwined with persistent indigenous legends, recorded by some early chroniclers, which speak of a specific plant or a liquid derived from it. According to these stories, when this substance was applied to stone, it would soften the rock, allowing it to be molded like clay or shaped with wooden tools, before it hardened again to its original, durable state. For many, this legend feels like a key waiting in a locked drawer. It offers an elegant solution, a technological shortcut that bridges the gap between the monumental task and the tools we have found. It suggests the Inca or a predecessor civilization were not just masterful laborers, but brilliant natural chemists, possessing an empirical understanding of their environment that we have yet to rediscover. Mainstream archaeology, however, approaches this hypothesis with deep skepticism. Researchers note that no physical evidence of such a plant or chemical compound has ever been identified in the archaeological record. Experiments attempting to soften granite with various natural acids or plant extracts have not produced the legendary results. The vitrified surfaces, while intriguing, can often be explained by natural processes like lightning strikes, which confuse rock, or by the long-term polishing effects of wind, water, and human touch over centuries. Skeptical archaeologists argue that the lost technology theory, while compelling, can inadvertently diminish the genuine, demonstrable achievements of the Inca people. It risks replacing the awe-inspiring reality of their coordinated social organization, their generational patience, and their profound empirical skill with a speculative deus ex machina, a mysterious substance that solves the puzzle too neatly. The danger, they suggest, is in creating a new mystery to explain an old one, rather than grappling with the harder, more humbling truth that human societies can achieve extraordinary things through means we have simply forgotten how to value. This debate is about more than construction methods. It is about how we interpret the past. The human mind naturally seeks explanations that match the scale of the wonder before it. When faced with something that seems to defy our understanding of a culture's known capabilities, there is a powerful temptation to fill the gap with a narrative of lost grandeur or even outside influence. This desire speaks to a deep-seated part of our curiosity, a yearning for history to be more dramatic, more filled with forgotten secrets. Yet it also challenges the careful, incremental work of archaeology, which must build its theories on evidence that can be held, measured, and tested. Perhaps the most productive way to view this divide is not as a conflict but as a dialogue. The lost technology hypothesis, even if ultimately unproven, serves a vital purpose. It pushes mainstream science to look harder, to question its own assumptions, and to remain open to possibilities that may lie outside current models. It reminds us that our catalog of ancient tools and techniques is incomplete, and that oral traditions can sometimes hold kernels of truth about processes we no longer comprehend. The stones of Sacsayhuamán do not give up their secrets easily. Whether the final answer lies in a forgotten chemistry, in a pinnacle of human effort we can scarcely conceive, or in some combination of both, the very existence of the debate is a testament to the enduring power of this place to challenge our view of history itself. The debate between lost knowledge and human effort finds its testing ground not in theory but in stone and sweat. A dedicated branch of research called experimental archaeology asks a beautifully simple question: what if we try to build it ourselves using only what they had? The most famous of these modern inquiries was led by archaeologist Jean-Pierre Protzen, who spent years in the Andes meticulously replicating the Inca stonemason's craft. His goal was not to move a 100-ton block, but to understand the fundamental process of shaping and fitting. He began with the simplest tools: river cobbles for hammers, harder stones for chisels, and abrasive sand. His method was a cycle of observation, imitation, and relentless physical trial. First, he would study an existing wall, analyzing the shapes and the likely sequence of work. Then, at a quarry, he would select a stone and begin the brutal, rhythmic process of pounding. Striking the andesite with a stone hammer does not cut it. It pulverizes a tiny patch of the surface into dust. Each blow removes a minuscule amount of material. To shape a stone, even a fraction of an inch requires thousands of precise, targeted strikes. The sound is a deafening, monotonous percussion, the work achingly slow. Protzen demonstrated that through this pounding, a skilled worker could indeed create a flat plane or even a gentle curve. The next stage was the fitting, which he identified as the true core of the genius. After rough shaping, the masons would move the test block near its future neighbor. They would then use a technique called scribing, marking the high points on the new block by rubbing pigment on the existing stone and seeing where it transferred. These marked spots would then be ground down with the abrasive sand and water, a process like sanding wood but infinitely slower and harder. This cycle of scribing and grinding would be repeated dozens, perhaps hundreds of times, each iteration bringing the two surfaces into closer conformity. Protzen proved conclusively that the perfect paper-thin joints were absolutely achievable with these basic methods. It was a triumph of skill, patience, and an almost artistic sensitivity to the stone's form. The experiments validated that the Inca toolkit was sufficient, yet they also revealed the staggering human cost. Shaping and fitting a single, modest-sized stone for a wall could take a small team weeks or even months of full-time labor. This scale of time investment, when multiplied across the thousands of blocks at Sacsayhuamán, paints a picture of a society wholly dedicated to a generational project. It confirms the power of the Mita labor system, but it also highlights a persistent gap in our understanding, the factor of efficiency. Protzen's work focused on the artistry of the final fit. The monumental logistics of quarrying, transporting, and lifting the very largest megaliths were not part of his experiment. Moving a 1-ton stone with log rollers is one thing. Moving a 120-ton stone up a mountain is a challenge of a different magnitude entirely. Furthermore, the experiments, while successful, could not replicate the possibly accelerated learning and refined techniques that would have been passed down through generations of specialist masons. A master who had shaped stone since childhood would have an intuitive feel for the material, a library of tricks and efficiencies in his hands that a modern researcher, no matter how dedicated, could only approximate. So what does experimental archaeology ultimately tell us? It confirms the breathtaking capability of human determination. It shows that the mystery is not one of magic, but of magnitude. We can see how it could be done, but we are left in awe of the sheer cultural will that made it happen. The experiments close one door, proving the tools were enough, but they open another, wider one, forcing us to truly contemplate the social engine, the coordinated purpose, and the profound patience required to turn that possible how into a mountainous, enduring reality. The stones were shaped by hands, but they were lifted by the spirit of an entire civilization. But the stones speak in more than just silent geometry. Stand in the right spot within the ruins, clap your hands once, and you might hear a sharp, focused echo that seems to come from the wall itself, not the open air. This is not a random acoustic quirk. Sacsayhuamán, it seems, was designed to be heard as well as seen. The site possesses distinct sonic properties that hint at a forgotten dimension of its purpose. Specific niches carved into the megalithic walls act like natural sound mirrors, capturing and reflecting sound waves in precise ways. Certain corridors and enclosed spaces create resonant frequencies, where the hum of a voice or the note of a flute would be amplified and sustained, filling the area with a palpable, vibrating energy. This emerging field of study, called archaeoacoustics, listens to the past through its architecture. Researchers have begun mapping these acoustic hotspots, suggesting that sound was not just background noise during ceremonies, but a central, active tool. In a culture where ritual connected the community to the cosmos, controlling sound could have been a way to alter consciousness, to unify large crowds in a shared vibrational experience, or to simulate the voice of a deity echoing from the stone. The rhythmic pounding of stone hammers during construction itself would have created a powerful, pervasive drone, a sonic landscape that may have helped coordinate labor across vast distances and instill a trance-like focus in the workers. This leads to a more speculative yet fascinating line of inquiry. Could sound have played a role in the very shaping and movement of the stones? While firmly outside mainstream archaeology, some theorists point to global legends and modern experiments with acoustic levitation. The concept is that specific, powerful resonant frequencies can reduce friction or even counteract gravity, making massive objects easier to maneuver. There are indigenous stories from the Andes that speak of the stones being moved by song, by the coordinated sound of trumpets or chants that compelled them to walk into place. While we have no scientific evidence that the Inca used sound in this literal, physical way, the persistence of such stories is a clue. It tells us that in the Inca worldview, sound was not separate from matter, it was a force that interacted with it. A ceremonial space engineered for perfect acoustics reveals a paradigm where every sense was engaged to create a total experience of the sacred. The visual perfection of the joints, the tactile feel of the cold, smooth stone, and the enveloping sound of chants bouncing off precise angles would have combined to transport participants out of ordinary reality. This challenges our modern, visually dominated perspective. We tend to analyze ancient sites through blueprints and measurements, but we may be missing the soundtrack. The true genius of Sacsayhuamán might lie in its synesthetic design, a masterpiece built not just for the eyes, but for the ears and the spirit, orchestrating an experience where architecture and ritual sound became one inseparable voice. The rock itself holds a story written in crystal and fracture. To move beyond legend and truly understand the mason's skill, we must listen to what the stone can tell us under the lens of modern science. Geologists and material scientists have turned their instruments on the andesite of Sacsayhuamán, not to diminish the achievement, but to decode the very canvas the builders used. Through petrography, where thin slices of rock are examined under polarizing microscopes, they map the stone's inner architecture. Andesite is a volcanic rock, a complex mosaic of crystals like plagioclase feldspar and pyrozene, all bound in a fine-grained groundmass. This specific composition gives it great compressive strength, perfect for bearing immense weight, but it also presents a particular challenge for shaping. It is notoriously hard and abrasive. Standard hardness tests like the Mohs scale confirm this, placing it firmly in the range that would quickly dull bronze tools and require phenomenal effort to work with stone hammers. Yet the science reveals a more nuanced picture. Not all andesite is uniform. The builders likely selected their stone with a master's eye, seeking out blocks with favorable characteristics. One key concept from stonemasonry is quarry sap, a natural moisture present in stone freshly quarried from its bed. This internal water can make the stone slightly softer and more workable for a limited time after extraction. It is possible the Inca masons, through deep empirical knowledge, worked the stones during this brief window of opportunity when the rock was more receptive to their pounding and grinding. Once the sap dried and the stone seasoned, it would achieve its full, legendary hardness, locking the shape in place for eternity. This turns the timeline of construction into a carefully orchestrated race against evaporation. Even more intriguing is the geological principle of jointing and fracturing. In their natural bed, rock formations are crisscrossed by networks of inherent weakness planes, created by cooling, tectonic stress, or other geological events. A brilliant quarryman does not fight the stone, he converses with it. By inserting wooden wedges into these natural cracks and soaking them to expand, or by patiently pounding along these predetermined lines, the Inca could persuade gigantic blocks to separate from the bedrock with an efficiency that seems almost miraculous. This was not random hacking, it was a form of geological surgery. At the building site, this understanding may have extended to the final shaping. The masons might have read the internal grain and fracture patterns of each individual block, shaping it in a way that followed these natural planes of weakness. This would drastically reduce the labor required to achieve a smooth face, as the stone would tend to break away more cleanly along its own hidden blueprint. The microscopic evidence supports this. Analyses of tool marks on unfinished stones show a directionality and pattern consistent with working with the stone's natural structure, not against it. So, from a material science perspective, the mystery begins to shift. It is less about possessing a magical softening agent and more about possessing a profound, generational literacy in stone itself. They understood its moods, its seasons, and its hidden faults. The perfect fit was not achieved by forcing an inert material into submission, but by guiding a living, responsive substance into its most harmonious, interlocking form. The true lost technology, then, may not be a chemical formula, but a cultivated tactile wisdom, a language of stone that we, in our age of power tools and synthetic materials, have largely forgotten how to speak. These zigzagging walls are a signature that cuts across the entire site. To a military mind, their form is brilliant defense, creating deadly crossfire zones where any attacker would be exposed from multiple angles. But to see only a fortress in these lines is to read the first page of a deep and layered text. In the Inca worldview, there was no clean separation between the practical and the sacred. Every shape held a mirror to the cosmos. The most immediate symbolic reading is the one we began with, the teeth of the Puma. Cusco was the body of this sacred animal, and Sacsayhuamán was its fierce, bared head. The three great tiers of zigzag walls are those monumental teeth, a permanent statement of the empire's protective and predatory power carved directly into the mountain. But look at the silhouette of these walls against the sky. Their sharp, repeating peaks do not just resemble teeth, they are a perfect echo of something far more volatile and divine, lightning. Illapa, the god of thunder, lightning, and rain, was one of the most vital deities in the pantheon. In an empire sustained by agriculture, Illapa controlled the very lifeblood of the society, the water that fed the terraces. The zigzag is the universal symbol for lightning, and by etching this symbol at a colossal scale into their most important citadel, the Inca were performing a permanent act of sympathetic magic. They were capturing the god's essence in stone, seeking to harness his power, to invite the life-giving rains, and to warn enemies that the fury of the heavens was embedded in their walls. There is a third, more subtle layer of symbolism. Stand back and view the profile of the terraces. Their rhythmic, undulating form against the horizon does not clash with the natural landscape, it repeats it. The line of the wall mirrors the jagged, serrated skyline of the Andean Cordillera itself. The architecture becomes an extension of the mountain, a man-made range that honors and replicates the sacred geography of Pachamama, the Earth Mother. This triple symbolism transforms our understanding of the builder's intent. The walls were not designed solely to repel armies, but to perform multiple functions simultaneously. They were a spiritual battery, charging the site with the power of the Puma, the lightning, and the mountains. This ideological fusion explains the obsessive, generation-spanning commitment to perfection. A defensive wall could be functional even if slightly imperfect, but a wall that is also the tooth of a sacred animal, the frozen bolt of a god, and the image of a holy mountain. That wall had to be flawless. Any misalignment, any gap in the joint would be a crack in the symbolic universe, a flaw in the conduit to divine power. The engineering, therefore, was never just a technical challenge. It was the highest form of cultural and religious expression. The masons were not merely stacking rocks, they were carefully assembling a three-dimensional icon, each perfectly fitted stone a deliberate syllable in an ongoing prayer to the forces that govern their world. When you grasp this, the entire site shifts. You are no longer looking at a ruined fortress, but at a frozen hymn, a monumental act of faith where the strength of the spirit demanded a perfection in stone that still, centuries later, leaves us utterly bewildered. The stones were not the only element shaped by a masterful hand. Flowing through the heart of Sacsayhuamán was another, more ephemeral force, water. A network of channels, fountains, and reservoirs carved directly into the living rock reveals a hydraulic system as sophisticated as the walls themselves. This was not an afterthought, it was the lifeblood of the entire complex, essential for both sacred ritual and practical survival. For the Inca, water was not merely a resource, it was a divine manifestation, the tears of the sky and the blood of the Earth Mother, Pachamama. Managing it was an act of reverence and profound engineering. The system began high above the terraces, where natural springs were carefully captured and channeled. Stone-lined aqueducts graded with a precise, gentle slope carried the water down into the citadel. These channels were often integrated directly into the monumental architecture, running beneath walkways or alongside walls, a seamless fusion of static stone and dynamic flow. The water was then directed into a series of ceremonial fountains known as pacas. These were not simple basins. They were intricately carved stone structures where the water would emerge, often through a sculpted spout, creating a continuous, gentle flow that was both visually and acoustically captivating. The sound of this moving water would have filled the ceremonial spaces, a constant, purifying whisper that underscored every ritual. For the large workforce living on site during construction, this system was utterly practical. The reservoirs provided a reliable supply of drinking water for thousands of laborers and their families. It supported the preparation of food, the mixing of abrasive sands for stoneworking, and basic sanitation. The engineering challenge was significant, requiring an intimate understanding of hydrology, gravity, and, once again, precise stonework to prevent leaks and erosion over centuries. The channels had to be perfectly sealed, their joints as tight as those in the walls to prevent precious water from seeping into the ground. This hydraulic network demonstrates a holistic vision. The Inca did not see masonry, astronomy, and water management as separate disciplines. They were interconnected threads in a single tapestry of sacred engineering. Controlling water was another way of conversing with the landscape, of demonstrating that human ingenuity could not only withstand natural forces like earthquakes, but could also harness and honor the flow of life itself. It reveals a civilization that thought in systems, understanding that a project of this grandeur needed more than strong walls. It needed a living, flowing heart to sustain the spirit and the body of those who built it. But this masterpiece of engineering presents a profound chronological riddle. The official history, recorded by Spanish chroniclers, attributes Sacsayhuamán to the reign of the great Inca Emperor Pachacuti in the mid-15th century, with work continuing under his successors into the early 16th. This places its construction squarely within the explosive, century-long expansion of the Inca Empire. Yet, when you run your hand over those seamless joints, a quiet question persists: could something this perfect really have been built in just a few generations? This timeline, while widely accepted, is not without its challenges. The puzzle begins with the nature of the site itself. Archaeology relies heavily on stratigraphy, the study of layered deposits, to date a structure. You dig down through the soil and analyze what you find at each level: the pottery shards, charcoal from ancient fires, tools, and organic remains. These layers form a chronological storybook. But Sacsayhuamán is built almost entirely of stone. There is no organic mortar to sample, no wooden beams to date. The floors inside the complex were often simple packed earth or stone paving, which can be replaced and disturbed over centuries. This means the primary material of the walls themselves offers no direct date. It is like trying to determine when a mountain was formed by looking only at its granite face. Researchers have turned to the areas around the walls, excavating the soils that have accumulated against their bases over time. Here, they have found artifacts, primarily Inca-style pottery, and charcoal fragments suitable for carbon-14 dating. These dates consistently point to the 15th and 16th centuries, seeming to confirm the historical accounts. However, a critical nuance exists. These dates tell us when the site was actively used and occupied by the Inca. They do not definitively prove when the foundational megalithic walls were first laid down. It is entirely possible, and even likely given Inca practices, that they built upon a pre-existing sacred site, reshaping and magnifying what was already there. This is where oral histories introduce a compelling layer of mystery. Andean traditions, passed down long before the Spanish arrival, speak of a much deeper past. Some stories suggest the site was begun by the first mythical Incas, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo, who emerged from the waters of Lake Titicaca in a time outside of history. Others point to even earlier cultures, like the mysterious Weri or Tiwanaku empires, which flourished centuries before the Inca rose to power. These narratives are not literal history, but they are cultural memory, often preserving kernels of truth about a place's significance across millennia. A few dissenting researchers and archaeologists point to geological and stylistic clues to support an older origin. They note the extreme erosion patterns on some of the most deeply buried stones, which seem to suggest a far greater age than 500 years. They also highlight a stylistic difference within the walls themselves. The largest, most perfectly fitted polygonal stones are often at the lowest levels, while the smaller, more roughly cut stones higher up, which were likely added by the Inca, use a different technique. This could indicate a sequence where a master builder culture created the indestructible foundation, and a later society built upon it with their own, less refined methods. Why does this debate over decades or even centuries matter so much? Because the timeline defines the protagonist of our story. If Sacsayhuamán was built entirely by the Inca in a burst of imperial energy, then it represents the pinnacle of their known technological and organizational prowess, a staggering but singular achievement. If, however, its roots are older, then we are looking at the legacy of a potentially different, perhaps even more specialized civilization, whose knowledge the Inca may have inherited, adapted, and perfected. It shifts the mystery from a question of how one empire built a fortress to a deeper inquiry about how knowledge flows and transforms across the centuries, leaving its greatest works unsigned and waiting for us to unravel their true beginning. The true miracle may not be in the stone, but in the society that shaped it. To achieve such precision across generations demanded a social engineering feat as intricate as the walls themselves. This was not a chaotic worksite of thousands, but a highly orchestrated symphony of skill. At its heart were the master masons, the Hatun runner or great men of stone. Their knowledge was not written in manuals, but held in their hands and eyes, a tactile library of pressure, sound, and fracture lines. They would have moved through the site not with shouts, but with quiet observation, running a palm over a surface to feel for the high point, listening to the ring of a hammer strike to judge the stone's internal integrity. Their most vital role was as teachers. Beside them, teams of apprentices learned through mimicry and endless repetition. A young worker might spend a year simply grinding a single stone face with sand and water, his hands developing the muscle memory for the perfect, flat plane. This was knowledge transmission through the body, a slow, sacred passing of a craft from one generation to the next, ensuring that the standard of perfection never wavered over the decades of construction. This culture of meticulous work was sustained by a shared vision that connected the humblest laborer to the divine king. Every strike of the hammer, every hour of grinding was an act of service or aini, a reciprocal duty to the community, the Sapa Inca, and the gods. The project's spiritual purpose transformed grueling labor into a form of collective prayer. This level of social cohesion finds a striking parallel across the ocean and centuries in the great cathedrals of medieval Europe. There, too, anonymous artisans worked lifetimes on structures they would never see completed, motivated by faith and a place in a celestial order. The cathedral builders had guilds to protect their secrets. The Inca had the Mita system to organize their masses. Both societies achieved the impossible by aligning individual purpose with a transcendent, communal goal. The collaboration behind these stones is a testament to what humans can build when they are united not just by a task, but by a story so powerful it could convince a person to dedicate their life to perfecting a single block, knowing that their grandchildren would be the ones to see it finally locked into place, speaking to the sky. The legends that cling to these stones speak of a different kind of force. Among the most imaginative threads in the tapestry of theories are those that suggest the builders of Sacsayhuamán possessed a method to temporarily defy gravity itself or to command sound as a physical tool. These are the narratives found not in archaeological journals, but in deep folklore and the realms of alternative history. Stories passed down that describe stones moving to the rhythm of a sacred chant or gliding into place at the sound of a trumpet. In one version of the tale, a priest or a wise woman would use a small handheld device, perhaps a disc or a rod, that could project a field, making the massive rock lose its weight, becoming light as a feather for transport. Another persistent legend speaks of a collective sonic ritual where rows of workers, each holding a specific musical instrument, would strike a perfect, resonant chord. This unified sound wave, vibrating at a precise frequency, would somehow interact with the stone, reducing friction or even lifting it, allowing it to be guided effortlessly up the mountain. These stories are compelling because they offer an elegant, almost magical solution to the most grueling physical challenge. They transform back-breaking labor into a ceremony of harmony, where human intention, expressed through sound or focused energy, directly converses with matter. To engage with these ideas fully, we must also hold them up to the light of modern physics. The concept of acoustic levitation is not pure fantasy. In laboratory settings today, scientists can use powerful, focused sound waves to suspend and manipulate very small objects, like droplets of water or tiny plastic beads in mid-air. The principle involves creating a standing wave with nodes where the pressure cancels out, creating a point of stable suspension. However, scaling this phenomenon up to manipulate a 100-ton block of andesite introduces problems of colossal magnitude. The energy required would be astronomical, far beyond any conceivable pre-industrial means of generation. The precise coordination of sound sources across a chaotic building site without digital control seems nearly impossible. Similarly, theories of anti-gravity or localized gravity shielding venture into theoretical physics realms for which there is no empirical evidence or known mechanism, especially for a civilization working with stone and bronze. From a rigorous scientific standpoint, these narratives face a vast chasm between a fascinating laboratory curiosity and a practical construction technology. So why do these legends persist with such tenacity across different cultures that built with megaliths? The answer may lie not in literal history, but in profound metaphor. In a worldview where everything was alive and interconnected, where mountains had spirits and stones held memory, the idea that a sacred sound could persuade a rock to move makes a deep kind of sense. It expresses a truth about the Inca relationship with their world, that construction was a dialogue, a collaborative act between people and a living landscape. The legend of the moving stone is a cultural memory of that dialogue, poetic shorthand for the incredible social harmony, the rhythmic coordination of thousands of workers pulling in unison to the beat of a drum or a chant. That synchronized effort, where the will of an entire community focused on a single point, might have felt to those participating exactly like a magical force lifting an impossible weight. These fringe theories, therefore, serve a valuable purpose in our exploration. They stretch the boundaries of our imagination, and remind us that the line between the rigorously proven and the wonderfully imagined is often where the deepest mysteries reside. They challenge us to consider not just how the stones were moved, but how the story of their movement was remembered, and what that story tells us about the people who told it. The air at this height holds less than half the oxygen found at sea level. Every task, from quarrying stone to hauling a timber lever, would have been performed in a state of permanent, breathless exertion. This was not just a construction site, it was a physiological experiment on a grand scale, set against a backdrop of brutal environmental extremes. Sunlight here is not just bright, it is a piercing force, with ultraviolet radiation so intense it can damage skin and eyes within hours. Temperatures do not shift gently from day to night, they plummet. A warm afternoon under a blazing sun can give way to a deep, bone-chilling freeze after sunset, with swings of 30 degrees Celsius or more. These were the relentless, daily conditions faced by the builders of Sacsayhuamán, and their engineering had to account for them at every level, from the human body to the behavior of the stone itself. Consider the workforce. The Inca who labored here were almost certainly adapted to high altitude over generations, with physiological traits like larger lung capacity and more efficient red blood cells. Yet, even for them, the sheer physical demand would have been staggering. The Mita labor system likely included rotations, allowing teams to recover, and the provision of coca leaves, a mild stimulant that helps combat fatigue and altitude sickness, would have been a crucial part of sustaining effort. Their very bodies were the first piece of adapted technology. Then there is the stone. Granite and andesite are incredibly durable, but they are not immune to physics. The drastic daily heating and cooling causes thermal expansion and contraction. A massive block expands minutely under the midday sun, then contracts as the frost sets in. Over centuries, this cycling can stress and crack rigid structures. The Inca solution, once again, is visible in the polygonal masonry. Those irregular, interlocking joints are not static. They allow for this microscopic movement. As the stones expand and contract at slightly different rates due to their unique shapes and positions, the complex joints give them room to breathe, to shift without creating destructive pressure points. A wall of uniform, rectangular blocks locked with mortar would have been torn apart by these daily thermal cycles within a few generations. The zigzagging walls themselves may have served an environmental purpose, casting shifting patterns of shadow that provided some relief from the relentless sun for workers and ceremonies alike. Perhaps most intriguing is the possibility that the builders turned a challenge into a tool. Some researchers speculate that the intense sunlight could have been harnessed. Could large, polished concave stones or sheets of reflective metal have been used to focus the sun's rays, creating points of intense heat to aid in shaping or softening stone surfaces? While speculative, it reflects a principle we know they understood: adaptation. They did not fight their environment, they learned its rhythms and incorporated them into their methods. The altitude, the cold, the sun, these were not just obstacles, they were participants in the construction process. To build for eternity at the roof of the world, you must design with the sky and the mountain as co-architects. This holistic understanding of place is what separates mere construction from true integration, revealing an adaptability that is the deepest form of engineering genius. Walk through the cobblestone streets of modern Cusco, and you are walking on a palimpsest, a story written and rewritten in stone. The legacy of Sacsayhuamán did not end on that hilltop. It flowed down into the very heart of the colonial city, where it was taken apart and reassembled into a new hybrid identity. You can see this dialogue in plain sight. The foundations of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, that grand symbol of Spanish faith and power, rest directly upon the seamless, polygonal walls of the Inca Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun. The contrast is stark and telling. Below, the massive, irregular stones fit together with that impossible, paper-thin precision, curving gently to form the temple's sacred walls. Above, the Spanish builders laid courses of uniform, red brick and rectangular stone blocks, held together with thick, crumbling mortar. The line between the two styles is a clear border in time and philosophy. This pattern repeats itself across the city. Look at the base of colonial mansions, government buildings, and even simple walls along narrow alleyways. You will often find that the first 6 or 8 feet are pure Inca masonry, the original foundations deemed too strong, too sensible, and too much work to remove. On top of this indestructible base, the colonial architecture rises, its straight lines and right angles a visual declaration of a new order. But in every major earthquake, the conversation between these two building methods speaks loudly. The Inca foundations sway and settle, while the colonial upper walls crack and tumble. The Spanish, in their pragmatic reuse, had unknowingly anchored their new world to a technological wisdom they did not fully comprehend. They quarried the sacred stones to build their churches, but in doing so, they preserved the proof of a superior engineering in the most humble of places, the city's foundations. This tangible legacy forces a quiet reflection on the nature of conquest and knowledge. The Spaniards came with steel, horses, and written word, instruments of power they believed defined civilization. Yet, in this fundamental dialogue with the earth, in the art of building structures that could dance with tectonic forces, they encountered a mastery that their own techniques could not match. They could dismantle the temples, but they could not replicate the joints. They could command the labor, but they could not pass on the tactile genius of the masons. This silent superiority, locked in the stones beneath their feet, creates a profound irony. The conquerors, seeking to imprint their culture upon the land, ended up being physically supported by the very civilization they sought to replace. Every cracked church wall next to a steadfast Inca foundation is a lesson in humility, a reminder that knowledge flows in unexpected ways, and that true legacy is often buried not in monuments, but in the enduring, functional truth of what works. The city of Cusco, therefore, is more than a beautiful blend of cultures. It is an open-air museum of a technological conversation, where the past literally upholds the present, whispering a timeless truth about adaptation, resilience, and the quiet, unassailable power of a perfectly fitted stone. The sky above was not just a vault of stars, it was the ultimate blueprint. To truly grasp the precision of Sacsayhuamán, you must look beyond the horizon, to where the sun and stars themselves were the final architects. Certain walls, niches, and corridors were not placed at random, but were carefully oriented to frame specific celestial events, transforming the entire complex into a colossal stone calendar and observatory. Researchers in the field of archaeoastronomy have spent years mapping these alignments, using modern software to roll back the sky to the 15th century. They discovered that on the morning of the June solstice, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, the first rays of the rising sun would pierce through a precisely carved window or doorway, casting a blade of light across a ceremonial stone or into a darkened interior chamber. This was not a happy accident. It was a deliberate, repeatable signal marking a pivotal moment in the agricultural and ritual cycle, a time to honor Inti, the sun god, and ensure his return and the renewal of life. Other alignments likely tracked the December solstice and the equinoxes, creating a 4-point anchor for the year. Beyond the sun, some researchers point to orientations that may have framed the brilliant rise of Venus or the position of the Southern Cross, a constellation of profound importance in Andean cosmology. This celestial connection elevates the entire purpose of the site. Sacsayhuamán was not just built on the earth, it was synchronized with the cosmos. This integration imposed a staggering level of required accuracy. A defensive wall could be off by a few degrees and still function, but a wall designed to capture the first sliver of sunlight on a specific morning once a year had to be perfect. The margin for error was not measured in inches but in arc minutes of celestial motion. This astronomical imperative explains the obsessive focus on the seamless joint and the perfect angle. If the structure was to serve as a reliable interface between the human and the divine, between the community and the cosmic order, then every stone had to be in absolute harmony with that order. The masons were not just shaping rock, they were etching celestial pathways into the mountain, their work a permanent prayer for the sun's return and the balance of the world. The heavens dictated the design, and the stones answered with silent, eternal precision. Beneath the visible wonder lies a hidden masterpiece. The true genius of Sacsayhuamán begins not with the stones, but with the earth that holds them. Before a single megalith was shaped or set, the Inca engineers performed a meticulous act of preparation, transforming the entire hilltop into a stable, integrated platform. They understood that a wall meant to last for millennia could not simply sit on the ground. It had to become one with it. This involved a deep, almost surgical intervention into the landscape itself. The first step was excavation. They would dig down, sometimes several meters, through the loose topsoil and weathered rock until they reached a solid, unbroken layer of bedrock. This living rock became the ultimate foundation. Into this prepared bed, they would set the largest, most foundational stones of the lowest course, often carving the underside of the block to match the contours of the bedrock itself. This created a direct, massive connection, anchoring the entire structure to the very bones of the mountain. It was a marriage of geology and architecture, ensuring that when the earth shook, the wall and the hill would move as a single, unified mass. But the ground was not just something to build upon, it was a dynamic system to be managed. The engineers faced a relentless challenge: water. At 12,000 feet, rain and melting snow could seep into the ground, pooling behind the massive walls. In the freezing night, this water would turn to ice and expand, a process called frost heave, which has the power to slowly, inexorably push even the heaviest stone out of alignment over time. The Inca solution was a network of invisible brilliance. They constructed deep, stone-lined drainage channels beneath the terraces and behind the walls. These were not simple ditches, but carefully engineered conduits with a precise gradient, designed to capture groundwater and channel it safely away from the foundations, releasing it down the hillside. This prevented saturation, eliminated the destructive cycle of freezing and thawing, and ensured the ground remained consistently stable. Furthermore, the entire site was sculpted. The natural slope of the hill was recontoured into a series of broad, level terraces held back by the zigzagging walls. This terracing did more than create flat building pads. It managed erosion and distributed the immense weight of the structure over a wider area, preventing subsidence. Every element, from the deepest drain to the highest stone, was part of a single, holistic design. This reveals a mindset far ahead of its time. The builders did not see a wall, a drain, and a foundation as separate projects. They saw a single, living system. They practiced a form of ancient geotechnical engineering, thinking in layers and forces, understanding that the secret to eternal stability lay in managing the invisible, the flow of water, the shift of soil, the transfer of weight. The majestic walls we admire are merely the visible expression of this deeper, subterranean intelligence. The true strength of Sacsayhuamán, therefore, has always been its roots. Among the terraces and ramparts, the stones hold more than weight, they hold intention. Carved into the living rock of the complex are features that speak of a different purpose, elements designed not for defense but for communion. The most famous of these is the Intihuatana, a name that translates to the hitching post of the sun. It is not a towering monument, but a low, intricately carved pillar of stone, its angles and planes cut with the same impeccable care as the fortress walls. On the solstices, when the sun reaches its furthest points, the pillar would cast no shadow at noon, a moment of perfect alignment where the sun was symbolically tethered to the earth, prevented from continuing its journey away and ensuring its vital return. This was no simple calendar marker, it was an act of cosmic husbandry, a ritual technology to maintain the balance of the world. Nearby, smooth stone basins or pakas channeled water in ceremonial flows, their gentle murmur a constant soundtrack to rituals of fertility and offerings to Pachamama. Broad, flat platforms provided stages where hundreds could gather to witness these rites, their voices and chants amplified by the very acoustics of the stone. The presence of these elements transforms our understanding of the entire site. Every zigzagging wall, every perfectly fitted joint was likely consecrated by ceremony before, during, and after its construction. The act of moving a megalith may have been preceded by offerings, its final placement celebrated with rituals that thanked the stone for its service and invited its spirit into the collective structure. This means the legendary precision was not merely an engineering benchmark, it was a spiritual prerequisite, a wall meant to channel the power of lightning or to frame the solstice sun could not be haphazard. A gap in the masonry would be a tear in the ceremonial fabric, a flaw in the conduit to the divine. The motivation shifts under this light. The generations of labor, the obsessive pursuit of the seamless fit, were driven by a need far deeper than creating an impervious fortress. They were building a machine for interacting with the gods, a permanent, unshakable instrument to mediate between the community and the forces that governed life, death, and the harvest. The engineering, therefore, served a master plan written in faith. When you see the Intihuatana, you are not looking at a separate ritual object placed within a military site. You are seeing the very heart of the complex laid bare, the reason why such impossible walls were necessary in the first place. The stones had to be perfect because they were the physical words of a perpetual prayer. This silence in the historical record is not an empty space but a profound statement about how knowledge was held. While the Egyptians carved hieroglyphs, the Mesopotamians pressed cuneiform, and the Maya painted codices, the builders of Sacsayhuamán left no written manuals, no stone-carved blueprints, no lists of materials. Their civilization thrived without a formal writing system as we know it. This presents the ultimate challenge for modern investigators. We are trying to solve an engineering puzzle without the instruction sheet, forced to become detectives reading a crime scene where the only witnesses are the stones themselves. All the intricate knowledge of quarrying, shaping, transporting, and seismic design had to reside in two living repositories, human memory and hands. Mastery was transmitted through an unbroken chain of oral tradition and practical apprenticeship. A young mason learned not by studying a diagram, but by watching his teacher's stance, listening to the specific ring of a well-struck hammer, feeling the texture of the stone dust with his fingers. The knowledge was embodied, a library written in muscle memory and whispered technique. This raises a fascinating question about the quipu, the intricate system of knotted cords the Inca used for record keeping. We know these were not mere decorative items, they were sophisticated administrative tools used to track census data, tribute, and astronomical cycles. The knots, their positions, colors, and types formed a complex tactile language. Could a quipu have encoded architectural data? Could the precise angles of a wall, the sequence for lifting a megalith, or the celestial alignment of a doorway be translated into a pattern of knots? Some researchers believe it is possible that the quipu may have served as a three-dimensional schematic or a project management log. However, the Spanish, in their campaign to dismantle Inca culture, systematically destroyed most quipus, decimating this unique information system. The few that survive are still largely undeciphered, their full potential as data storage devices lost to us. This linguistic and epigraphic dead end forces a fundamental shift in our approach. Without written records, we cannot ask the architects for their calculations. We must instead ask the walls, Every tool mark, every subtle curvature, every pattern of weathering becomes a word in a silent language. We rely on the meticulous science of archaeology to date layers and analyze residues, and on the art of reverse engineering, trying to physically replicate their processes to understand their thinking. This makes the mystery not just about how they built it, but about how they taught it, how they preserved a standard of perfection across generations without a single page of written instruction. It speaks to a culture that placed supreme value on lived experience, on the direct transmission of wisdom from one mind and one pair of hands to the next. The stones of Sacsayhuamán are therefore more than a monument. They are the final, frozen lesson plan of a masterclass that lasted a century, a curriculum written not on parchment but in granite. The silent language of stone is now being translated by light. In the hands of modern researchers, tools like laser scanners and high-resolution cameras are performing a kind of digital archaeology, mapping every curve and seam of Sacsayhuamán with a precision the human eye could never achieve. This is not about replacing the wonder with cold data, but about listening to the walls in an entirely new way, hearing the subtle stories hidden in their geometry. Through techniques like LiDAR, which fires millions of laser pulses to map surfaces, and photogrammetry, which stitches thousands of photographs into a perfect three-dimensional model, the entire site is being reborn as a virtual twin. This digital replica captures reality down to a fraction of a millimeter, freezing the present state of the ruins in an immutable, measurable form. What does this hyper-precise view reveal? For the first time, researchers can quantify the legendary fit. They can place a virtual caliper across any joint and get a numerical answer, confirming that yes, many seams truly are tighter than a sheet of paper, often measuring less than half a millimeter across their entire length. But the models go far beyond confirming old stories. They uncover hidden patterns. By analyzing the three-dimensional shapes of hundreds of blocks, algorithms can search for repeating angles, common curvature profiles, or systematic sequences in the stonework. This could help answer whether the masons worked from a mental library of shapes or if each block was a unique response to its neighbors. The digital models also become testing grounds for physics. Engineers can apply simulated forces, mimicking the lateral push of an earthquake or the immense weight from above, to see exactly how stress flows through that intricate polygonal network. They can watch in a virtual space how each stone bears load and transfers it, revealing the engineering logic behind every irregular interlock. Perhaps most importantly, this technology offers a way to objectively compare theories. A team proposing a specific method for shaping, say using stone hammers and abrasive sand, can use the model to calculate the exact volume of material that would need to be removed from a rough quarry block to achieve the final, perfect shape. They can then estimate the man-hours required, providing a concrete data point in the debate over feasibility and timeline. Conversely, the models can search for telltale signatures of other methods. If a stone was somehow softened and molded, would its crystalline structure show a different pattern of deformation than one that was pounded and ground? The digital scan becomes a forensic tool, looking for the microscopic fingerprints of the builder's hands. This quantitative approach moves the discussion from speculation into the realm of testable hypothesis. It cannot tell us what the builders were thinking, but it can tell us with increasing certainty what they actually did. The light of a laser scanner does not dispel the mystery. It illuminates its true contours, giving us a new foundation of fact from which to appreciate the staggering scale of the achievement. We are no longer just admiring the wall, we are beginning to measure the mind that built it. We are drawn to these stones not just for their size, but for the silence they hold. This profound mystery captivates us because it touches a deep psychological nerve, a fundamental human need to wonder. When we stand before a wall that defies our own engineering logic, something within us shifts. We are faced with a paradox, a structure built by a culture we have often labeled, however incorrectly, as primitive, yet it accomplishes something our modern technology cannot easily duplicate. This creates a cognitive dissonance, a gap in the story we tell ourselves about human progress. Our linear narrative of history, where knowledge accumulates in a straight line toward the present, is suddenly challenged. The mind naturally seeks to resolve this tension, to fill that gap with an explanation that matches the scale of the wonder. This is where the allure of concepts like ancient astronauts or lost high technologies finds fertile ground. They offer a dramatic, sweeping answer, a deus ex machina that bridges the chasm between what we see and what we think was possible. These theories are less about the stones themselves and more about our own psychology. They represent a longing for a past that was grander, more mysterious, and filled with secrets waiting to be rediscovered. They make the world feel larger, more magical. It is a comforting thought that our ancestors might have possessed wisdom so profound it has since vanished, because it suggests that we, too, might one day unlock such power. Yet, this very desire can sometimes lead us to overlook the more humbling, and in many ways more profound, truth. The alternative explanation is not a vanished technology, but a zenith of human skill, patience, and communal will that we have simply forgotten how to value. This is perhaps the most unsettling idea of all. It forces us to confront the possibility that a society without steel, without wheels, without written plans, could achieve a peak of tactile genius and coordinated effort that our own fragmented, technology-dependent world struggles to comprehend. Sacsayhuamán becomes a mirror. When we look at it, we do not just see an ancient fortress, we see our own assumptions about intelligence, about civilization, and about what constitutes true advancement. We project onto its seamless joints our deepest questions about human potential. Are we smarter today, or have we merely traded one form of knowledge for another? Have we gained digital precision but lost a physical, embodied wisdom that could converse with stone? The site holds us because it offers no easy answers, only a silent, granite question. It asks us to reconsider where genius resides, reminding us that the most enduring monuments are often built not from a place of dominance over nature, but from a profound and patient dialogue with it. In that unanswered question lies a timeless invitation to humility and awe. 500 years later, the stones are teaching a new generation. In an era defined by climate urgency and infrastructure that often fails under stress, the silent logic of Sacsayhuamán speaks directly to our most pressing engineering challenges. The principles embedded here are not ancient history. They are a blueprint for a more resilient future waiting to be read. Modern construction is frequently a story of extraction and imposition, hauling materials across continents and forcing standardized designs onto diverse landscapes. The result is often high energy costs, a massive carbon footprint, and structures that fight their environment. The Inca model presents a radical alternative built on a foundation of profound locality. Every multi-ton block was sourced from nearby quarries, minimizing transport energy to an astonishing degree. They used what the land provided, shaping the abundant andesite granite into a form that celebrated its inherent strength. This is the essence of sustainable sourcing, a closed-loop system where the building emerges from the site itself. There is no imported steel, no concrete shipped from afar, just a deep conversation between the builder and the mountain. This philosophy extends to the very purpose of the structures. We often build for a lifespan measured in decades, with planned obsolescence and costly maintenance schedules written into the design. Sacsayhuamán was engineered for permanence with an expectation of zero maintenance. The polygonal, mortarless joints were not just an artistic choice, they were a longevity strategy. Without mortar to crack and crumble, without metal reinforcements to rust, the walls were designed to be self-sustaining. They age not by degrading, but by settling more deeply into their purpose. This stands in stark contrast to much of modern infrastructure, where bridges require constant repair and buildings need expensive retrofitting after a fraction of the time. The Inca asked a different question of their designs: how can we build something that cares for itself? The answer was in geometry and gravity, creating a system where time and stress only reinforced the bonds. Perhaps the most critical lesson is in seismic resilience. In earthquake-prone regions today, engineers strive to design buildings that can withstand shaking through complex and expensive systems of flexible joints, dampers, and reinforced frames. The Inca achieved a similar, if not superior, result through pure morphology, the science of shape. Their walls are a masterclass in passive survivability. By rejecting rigid right angles and embracing a dynamic matrix of interlocking polygons, they created a structure that absorbs and dissipates energy organically. It is resilience through flexibility, not brute force. Modern materials science is now looking to these ancient patterns, studying how irregular, interlocking geometries can be replicated in new composites and modular designs for buildings in fault zones. The goal is the same: to create structures that move with the earth rather than against it, saving lives and preserving communities when the ground trembles. The ancient walls demonstrate that the most advanced safety feature can be baked into the design itself, not added as an afterthought. The final, overarching principle is harmony. The Inca did not see the hilltop as a blank slate to be dominated. They saw it as a partner. Their engineering was an act of listening, of understanding the water flow, the thermal cycles, the prevailing winds, and the seismic personality of the place. The terraces managed erosion, the drainage channels protected the foundations, and the orientation honored the sun. The architecture became an extension of the mountain's own logic. This bioclimatic and geotechnical sensitivity is the frontier of modern sustainable design. Today's most forward-thinking architects speak of biomimicry, of designing buildings that function like ecosystems, and of creating structures that generate their own energy and manage their own water. Sacsayhuamán is a 500-year-old case study in exactly that. It shows that durability does not require conquering nature, but collaborating with it. In a time of environmental crisis, this ancient fortress offers a quiet, powerful reminder. The most intelligent design is one that learns from the wisdom already written in the land. The future of resilient building may not lie in ever more complex technology, but in rediscovering the elegant, enduring simplicity of building with the world, not just upon it. The mystery of these walls has, over time, gathered its own mythology. A narrative of impossible perfection can be as captivating as the truth, but it often obscures the real human genius at play. Let's clear the air on a few persistent claims. You might have heard that the joints are so precise they must have been cut with lasers, or that every stone is a perfect, identical puzzle piece. These ideas are compelling, but they don't hold up to a closer, more honest look. First, the laser cut theory. While the seams are astonishingly tight, they are not machine perfect. Examine them closely and you will see subtle, natural variations. The surfaces are not glass smooth. They bear the faint, undulating texture of meticulous hand grinding. The fit is achieved through relentless test fitting and abrasion, not through a single, flawless cut. This human-scale imperfection is ironically the proof of their method. It shows the process of trial, adjustment, and ultimate mastery. Next, the idea of identical stones. This is perhaps the greatest misunderstanding of all. The true brilliance of the masonry is that no two blocks are the same. Each one is a unique polygon, shaped to fit its specific neighbors in a three-dimensional lock. If they were identical, the wall would be rigid and vulnerable. It is their beautiful, intentional irregularity that gives the structure its legendary flexibility and strength. They crafted a dynamic mosaic, not a stamped repetition. Then there are the more colorful explanations involving giants, visitors from other worlds, or lost super-civilizations. These stories often stem from a well-intentioned place, a desire to match the scale of the wonder with an equally grand cause. Yet they inadvertently do a disservice to the Inca people. By attributing their work to outside or supernatural forces, we dismiss their own monumental achievement. The evidence for human labor is everywhere once you know where to look. At the quarries scattered around the site and even embedded in unfinished walls, archaeologists have found thousands of simple stone hammers. These are the primary tools, their surfaces battered from striking the hard andesite. We have found the abrasive sands used for grinding and the bronze chisels, however soft, used for finer work. We have the cultural records of the Mita labor system and the oral histories that speak of generational projects. This is not a mystery without clues, it is a puzzle with a very human answer. Debunking these myths is not about taking away the magic, it is about redirecting our awe to the proper source. The real story is not less amazing because it was done by people, it is infinitely more so. It tells us about the power of coordinated society, the heights of patient craftsmanship, and a relationship with materials that we are still striving to understand. When we let go of the need for a lost laser or an alien architect, we can finally see the walls for what they truly are, a testament to what human hands and minds, united by a shared vision, can actually accomplish. That is a wonder far more profound and inspiring than any fiction. But this timeless stone is not immune to the pressures of our own time. The very wonder that draws millions of visitors each year is also its greatest modern vulnerability. Each footstep, each touch, each vibration from the nearby city of Cusco accumulates into a slow, invisible force of erosion. The preservation of Sacsayhuamán is no longer just about understanding the past. It is a complex, urgent engineering challenge for the present, a race to protect a fragile dialogue between stone and sky before it fades into silence. The threats are multifaceted and relentless. Mass tourism, while vital for the local economy, brings constant physical wear. The fine, abrasive dust from thousands of shoes settles into the ancient joints, acting like sandpaper over decades. Unintentional touches transfer oils from skin to the stone, altering its surface chemistry. More directly, the temptation to climb or lean against the walls, despite barriers, imposes stresses they were never designed to bear from such frequent point-source contact. Beyond the visitors, the environment itself is changing. Shifts in rainfall patterns and more intense freeze-thaw cycles, potentially linked to broader climate shifts, accelerate the natural weathering of the andesite. And perhaps most insidiously, urban encroachment from the growing city below introduces new vibrations from traffic and construction, a constant, low-grade seismic tremor that tests the wall's ancient resilience. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture, in partnership with UNESCO, which lists the site as a World Heritage Treasure, faces a monumental task. Their mission is to stabilize this legacy without freezing it in time, to allow for awe without allowing access to become a form of attrition. The work is a masterclass in minimal intervention. You will not see modern concrete or steel reinforcements slapped onto the ancient stones. Such invasive materials would create incompatible stresses and permanently alter the historic fabric. Instead, conservators act more like stone doctors, using precision and tradition. When a stone is found to be dangerously loose, the first step is meticulous documentation with three-dimensional laser scanning, creating a digital fingerprint of its exact position and shape. Only then is it carefully removed. The original mortarless joint is cleaned of centuries of accumulated soil and organic matter. Then, using a technique that honors the Inca spirit, the stone is reset using a thin, sacrificial layer of a specially formulated clay-based mortar. This material is deliberately weaker than the surrounding stone. In the event of an earthquake, this modern mortar will crumble first, allowing the stones to move as they were designed to, protecting the original faces from damage. It is a brilliant compromise, providing temporary stability without compromising the eternal design. Monitoring is constant and high-tech. A network of tiny, sensitive instruments is discreetly placed across the site, measuring micro-movements, tracking cracks for any widening, and monitoring humidity and temperature within the walls. This data creates a living health chart for the citadel, allowing conservators to predict trouble spots and intervene before a small shift becomes a catastrophic collapse. The most profound challenge, however, is not technical but philosophical. It is the balance between preservation and experience. How do you keep a wonder alive without loving it to death? Authorities have implemented managed access, limiting visitor numbers in sensitive areas, creating designated pathways to channel foot traffic, and employing trained guides to educate tourists on respectful behavior. The goal is to transform a visit from a passive photo opportunity into a conscious act of witnessing, where each person understands their role not just as an observer, but as a temporary guardian. This ongoing work is a humbling echo of the original construction, where once thousands labored to build, now small teams labor to sustain. They are not using stone hammers but laser levels and spectral analyzers. Yet the core intention resonates across the centuries, a deep commitment to honoring a legacy of ingenuity. To protect Sacsayhuamán is to preserve more than an archaeological site. It is to safeguard a permanent question mark in human history, a classroom without a roof where future generations can stand, look upon the impossible fit of stone upon stone, and feel the same stirring of wonder and inquiry that compels us today. The greatest tribute we can offer to the builders is to ensure their silent granite question continues to be asked. So we are left with the questions themselves, the stubborn enigmas that refuse to be smoothed away by time or theory. These are the core mysteries that continue to draw researchers back to the stones, the open loops in the story of Sacsayhuamán. First, the journey. While we understand the basic principles of leverage and rollers, the precise, step-by-step method for moving a 120-ton block from a quarry 12 miles away, across ravines and up a mountain, remains a logistical puzzle. How did they navigate the steepest inclines without catastrophic slippage? What was the exact choreography of ropes, logs, and human force that made the impossible journey routine? Second, the fit. We know they used stone hammers and abrasive sand, but the process for achieving that paper-thin joint on a curved, polygonal face is still not fully mapped. How did they perform the final, micron-precise adjustments on a multi-ton block suspended in mid-air? Was it purely a triumph of generational patience, or was there a lost trick, a forgotten technique for fine-tuning that we have yet to rediscover? Third, the clock. Did the entire monumental complex truly rise within a single century of imperial expansion, as the chronicles state? Or does the evidence of deep erosion and stylistic shifts in the masonry point to a much older foundation, built by a culture whose name is lost to us and merely finished by the Inca? The timeline is the framework for every other question, and it remains frustratingly elusive, written in layers of soil and stone rather than ink. Finally, the toolkit. Have we truly found all the tools they used? The stone hammers and bronze chisels explain so much, yet some observers still wonder if a key piece is missing from the archaeological record. Could there have been a method, perhaps based on plant chemistry or controlled heat, that left no durable trace? This is the most speculative mystery, but it persists because it addresses the gap between the monumental effort we can imagine and the flawless result we can see. These four questions are not separate, they are intertwined. The answer to one would shed light on all the others. Together, they form the enduring core of the mystery, a testament not to our ignorance but to the profound sophistication of the achievement. The walls were built to last forever, and so, it seems, were the questions they inspire. Yet the most vital perspective comes not from a satellite or a scanner, but from the living descendants of the builders themselves. For contemporary Quechua communities in the Andes, Sacsayhuamán is not an alien puzzle or a lost technological marvel. It is home. It is a sacred space known as Sacsayhuamán, a name that in their language speaks of a satisfied falcon, a symbol of vigilance and harmony. This shift in viewpoint is not a minor detail. It is a fundamental reclamation of narrative. Where outside observers see an engineering enigma, indigenous knowledge holders see the profound legacy of their ancestors' intimate dialogue with the living world. The site is understood not as a fortress built against nature, but as a temple built with it, a physical manifestation of a philosophy where every stone, every terrace, every alignment was an act of reciprocity with Pachamama, the Earth Mother. This worldview reframes the entire discussion. The obsessive precision of the joints was not merely a technical feat, it was an act of reverence. A perfectly fitted stone ensured a stable conduit for spiritual energy, a proper vessel for ceremony. The labor of the Mita was not forced servitude, but a sacred duty, a collective participation in strengthening the bonds between the community, the cosmos, and the land. This cultural lens offers a holistic understanding that purely technological analyses can miss. A scientist might measure the angle of a solstice alignment, but an Andean elder might explain it as the sun god Inti being welcomed home, a moment of celestial balance essential for the community's spiritual and agricultural well-being. The sound properties of the stone are not just acoustic quirks. They are the architecture's voice, used to communicate with the deities of the mountain and the sky. This living knowledge, passed down through oral tradition, ceremony, and daily practice, provides context that turns cold stone back into a warm, breathing testament of a people. Centering these perspectives is crucial, for it reminds us that the builders were not anonymous engineers. They were grandparents, farmers, and priests whose intelligence was woven into the fabric of their culture and their spiritual relationship with the earth. Their descendants hold the keys to understanding the why behind the how, offering insights into the intention that guided the hands that shaped the granite. To listen to these voices is to complete the circle, to see Sacsayhuamán not as a silent ruin of a vanished people, but as a continuing, active participant in the cultural and spiritual life of the Andes, its true story still being told in the language of its first architects. The walls of Sacsayhuamán do not simply stand on a hill, they stand outside of time, a permanent question mark carved in granite. Our journey through its mysteries has taken us from distant quarries to celestial alignments, from the physics of a dancing wall to the spirit of a unified society. We have seen stones that defy weight, joints that defy space, and a vision that defies our linear assumptions about progress. This is not a story about a lost super technology or visitors from the stars. It is a far more profound and human story, one about the staggering heights a civilization can reach when its purpose is aligned, its knowledge is deep, and its dialogue with the natural world is one of respect, not domination. The site's ultimate lesson is a challenge to our own perspective. We often measure advancement by the complexity of our tools, by the speed of our machines. Sacsayhuamán suggests another metric, the depth of our understanding and the endurance of our creations. Here, intelligence was expressed not in forcing the landscape into submission, but in listening to its secrets and collaborating with its rhythms. The builders achieved what we might deem impossible not with futuristic gadgets, but with an empirical genius honed over generations, a mastery of material passed from hand to hand, and a social engine powered by shared belief. This invites a necessary humility. It asks us to look at the ancient world not as a primitive prelude to our own, but as a landscape dotted with peaks of forgotten genius, where different cultures solved monumental problems with unique and brilliant insight. The perfect seam between two stones is more than an engineering feat. It is a fossilized moment of perfect attention, a testament to a kind of patience and focus that feels almost alien in our hurried age. As we step back from these zigzagging ramparts and turn toward our own world, we carry with us more than just answers. We carry better questions. What knowledge have we marginalized in our pursuit of efficiency? What might we learn from building with a place rather than just upon it? Sacsayhuamán remains, above all, a reminder that history is not a single book we have finished reading, but a vast library where many of the most illuminating texts are written in a language of stone and sky, waiting for us to learn how to read them. If this exploration has reshaped your view of the past, we would love to hear your reflections. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to join us as we continue to seek out the world's greatest historical mysteries, one stone, one story at a time.